It's okay.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to part 2 of class 2, Rocks and Water, the Power of Brushwork. Everything's going perfectly, and this is not a second recording. So anyways, what we're going to do is the wipe away technique. I just put on a coat of quinacridone red on a big panel with a slightly yellowish gesso. And then I'm going to add some Payne's gray and kind of feel it out from there. Maybe add some blue. We will see. I am, in fact, painting in the dark right now, so this will be interesting. But it's all big shapes, so that maybe should help. So I'm just going to grab a paper towel, and I'm just going to give this a very light wipe down. And what this does with the paper towel is it kind of absorbs some of the shininess, some of the paint thinner that I've added to help the paint move. I'm not pushing very hard. If I push hard, you'll see that I can get back to pretty light. So it's just a light pressure. And now I've got my same brush. It's still got some of the quinacridone red on there. I'm just going to grab some Payne's gray. We've let that quinacridone sit for probably 5-10 minutes now, maybe. So I'm hoping that it stained the surface pretty well. Transparent colors do seem to stain more. So some of the students in the class are really interested in tonalism, which we're going to revisit in much more detail in the fall after the summer here. But I still, even when I'm painting like this, even though it's really high, value differential, like with the darks and the lights and the brights and the, I don't know, blacks, I guess, and the anyways, there's a lot of variation here, but I still think of this oftentimes as kind of like a tonalist painting, because what I'm looking for is almost like a no tan, meaning just black and white or two values. I'm just literally like, what's the least amount of shapes? What's the least amount of values I can create that will help me to tell the story, or at least give me the best start in my painting? Sometimes I'll just cover the whole thing, which I could just do. Sometimes I kind of will give myself, a little bit of a head start, because I'm going to be removing a lot of these darks. So why add them there in the places that I know they're not going to go? When I'm starting my painting this way, I like to think of it like a big block of wet, nice, soft clay. And if you think of like you're going to do a portrait, right? If I was going to do a head, sculpture of one of you guys, would just start with this big block of paint. And what I'm going to do is, let's just go ahead and cover it, just so this analogy makes sense.
Are you using a soft brush, Michael?
It is fairly soft, but it's firm enough that it's moving the paint pretty easily. So, and it's just a cheap house brush.
Right.
Yeah, but it's not like really a lousy one that's going to leave a lot of brush, a lot of hairs or anything. So anyways, going back to the analogy of a big bunch of clay. So what I've done is I've just kind of taken this big block of clay. Let's just say we're going to, sculpt Karen's face here. So we're going to slowly just start removing the parts of the block that aren't Karen's shape of her head, right? So that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to be removing the areas that aren't the big dark shapes, right? And what I like about this is, let's just say again, we're sculpting Karen's head, and I just remove too much paint, too much clay, and all of a sudden Karen has no nose. And we all know that Karen is not Voldemort and she needs a nose. And so I can just take from that pile of clay and put it back, and I can re-sculpt the nose. And that's what I like about this. It's very much like sculpting. So it's like painting as sculpting. So here, let's try removing it. And you want to know what's funny? Is my studio is so dark that I can't see this. I'm actually looking at the monitor because the camera is picking up way more detail than I can see.
You feel like a weather girl now.
What's that?
You feel like a weather girl now.
I always feel like a weather girl, so that's interesting. Yeah, finally it makes sense though.
In front of a green screen.
Yeah.
So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come in and just start thinking big abstract shapes. I talk to you guys all the time that we do not paint things, right? We paint what? What do we paint, Karen? Since you're the one with the nose missing, what do we paint?
Shapes.
Shapes and values.
Shapes and
yeah.
values. Shapes, values, colors, and then edges. We do not paint things. It is up to our viewers to see things. If we put the right shapes, the right values, the right colors in the right places, things appear. It is, I can't even tell you how much fun I'm having. I love this. Like, I really, if I could just make a job out of just doing this part of it, I think I would be a very happy guy. And again, this style, this approach isn't for everybody. And again, this is just the way I start my paintings oftentimes. Sometimes they really work out and I'll try to preserve them, but a lot of times this is just the blueprint. This is just me giving myself a roadmap to build up on.
And what's your determining factor between doing something like this versus doing an underpainting?
Sometimes it's the amount of detail. Like if I really need a lot of small forms, like the thing that's really interesting is in the small shapes, then that might not lend itself to this. But the truth is that the more I do this, the more I'm finding that it works more often. But it does take practice. It does take experimentation. And yeah, so I was teaching a plein air class yesterday, and I was talking to them about the 5 to 6 to 7 stages of painting that, a typical painting goes through, right? The first and by far and away the most important is design and composition, right? So that would be when I'm editing this photo, which is really glary. When I'm editing this photo and really trying to figure out, I probably cropped off the top, the bottom, I zoomed in on what I thought was important, trying to get a design that I thought was interesting. Even I can't see this photo hardly. I have to look at the monitor. So that's that first stage. It is the most important. I will repeat myself again and again on this. You cannot paint your way out of bad design.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot paint your way out of bad composition. Mm-hmm. If your composition and design is not interesting, no matter how good you become with color or how good you become at beautiful, interesting brush strokes, it's still never going to be a great as good as it could be. So
Mhm.
design and composition, balance, movement, rhythm, lead in lines, all those things are so important. So you want to spend more time there. People always ask me, how long does it take to paint, this and that painting? And the truth is, there's a lot of times when I will spend more time
Mhm.
literally just drawing and redrawing, editing and re-editing, trying to figure out what it is in this painting or in this picture that makes me want to paint it. That's so important. What is it? And then not only that, but how do I make it important, or how do I support it? So design and composition, that is step one. Step two, typically, is drawing. Right? That means just getting it onto the surface, however you want to do it, whether it's outlines or like I do here. Step three, if I was just doing like outlines, is called blocking in. And that's where I'm thinking of the painting as a very much a two-dimensional space. I'm not worrying about too much depth, too much perspective. I'm not worrying about making the forms have, making the shapes have form. Again, think a circle becoming a sphere, think a square becoming a cube. So in the block-in stage, so it's stage one, design and composition, stage two, drawing, stage three, block-in, stage four is refine, right? And you'll hear other artists talk about this as well, these stages. And refine is where you're going to spend most of your time, probably, except for the design and composition stage. But most of your painting time is going to be on refine. Refine is where you take your two-dimensional shapes, your two-dimensional objects, and you create the illusion of 3 dimensions. You give them depth, you give them form, you bring in whatever detail as much or as little detail as you think is relevant. And then I like to say there's 2 more stages, and I've heard what is his name, Richard, I can't remember his name, friend of mine who does acrylic paintings, talking about the 5th stage is actually take a break, get away from the painting, get 5 minutes, at least 15 minutes is better. A night is even better than that. Finish your painting, and stop your painting and then come back after a break. Maybe even you bring in somebody else to look at it with you that you trust their opinion. But this last stage is finish or fix. And that's where you kind of come in and you see the little tweaks that need doing that are again going to help you tell the story and really start to refine things. Do those stages make sense?
Yes.
It's kind of funny, for a
Yes.
long time I kind of thought they were just like self-evident. But when I actually, talked to friends and discussed it, I was like, oh, there is actually a system. Oh, so back to this. So with this way of painting, I'm combining drawing and blocking in at the same time. So that's kind of why I like this, is it's helping me to see my big shapes and my drawing all at once. So then I can kind of modify it all together. So now hopefully we're beginning to see my big values, my big shapes.
I think it also forces you to loosen up a little bit.
Yeah, and you just can't think things, right?
You
I'm
can't.
just thinking, the big shape of Karen's head. Sorry, Karen, you have a big head. I'm thinking, I'm not thinking things. I'm not thinking sky, trees, water. I'm just thinking, here's a light shape, here's a dark shape. Where do they kind of line up? Where does, what's helping this? What's helping that? And again, it's very sculptural. So if I decided, you know what, I cut like this tree off, I would actually like these trees over here to be a little taller. I just bring a little more paint back. It's very loose, very flexible. Again, just like that soft clay. So I can work and rework this for at least 15, 20 minutes and really kind of start to knock in things. It allows me to step back. If we're reading my handouts, it allows for the magic on the water with the whatever. And, but it just really allows me to, okay, like here's a good example. See this reflection of this tree? And I cut in too far, right? It doesn't line up. The reflection should come down at least out here. So no problem, just bring that dark back out. Nothing is precious. I guess that's a good way of thinking about it. At this stage, everything is loose. Everything is, yeah, very flexible. I know I want this group of trees to be closer. So I can think of the base of those, but they're in shadow. I know that, so it's not going to be bright, but I know that I want to give myself a note of where's the base of these trees. So I just kind of come in here maybe. Then I know that these trees go further back, this grouping. So it's got to be a little higher up. So let's just put it here. This next grouping back here really is quite a bit further back. So the base where the land meets the water is quite a ways back. And I know there's going to be a house back here eventually with a little bit of reflection, some lights. That'll be a kind of a nice focal point. All right, so what do you guys observe? Is there anything that's way off in my little knock-in of shapes here?
Nothing off, but I'm wondering, will you put the next set of values in your tree groupings, or will that come in your next step? I maybe
It can
jump.
go either way. So I'm just gonna throw away this dirty towel and let's go ahead and grab a new towel. And at this point, I can go ahead and dip my finger through it. And I'm gonna dip that just barely into paint thinner. I'm actually even gonna knock off some of that, like dip it, dab it on my table here. Because I don't want it dripping. But now what I can do is just think, okay, now where's my lighter light? So what right now, again, the no tan, I basically have a 2-value picture on here. I'm just gonna rub some paint thinner on here where I know that my lights are coming in.
And is that going right down to your board? Is that white or is it stained? Just
I'm
for
not
clar-
positive yet. Well, for one, it's dark in here. I can't tell.
Yeah, it doesn't look like there's any red in it from here. That's why I was
Oh,
wondering.
yeah, we'll see. Maybe my gesso layer wasn't too, because again, this is over an old painting. So maybe it's not too absorbent. So here we go. Let's see.
It looks a little pink.
But it's not the red that he put down in the beginning. That's
No.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to have stained too much, which,
okay.
you know what? Because I know I want to come back in and glaze into this. So lighter might be better. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
I just wanted to be sure we were seeing right.
I'm sorry, I cut you off, Gail. What
I
was
just
that?
wanted to be sure that we were seeing what you were seeing.
I see
It wasn't
darkness.
pink. Yeah, that it wasn't red. It was considerably lighter.
I'm
It
gonna
looks
turn
like
on the
the
light for a second and see what I actually see.
It looks like the under panel color of the pale yellow.
A little bit, yeah, it's kind of a little bit stained. And again, because I mixed that black, that Payne's gray in, it is kind of a dirty red anyways, kind of a purpley red. It's definitely starting to stain. If I don't hit it with the paint thinner, like if I just go in and try to wipe away where there's no paint thinner, it doesn't wipe away nearly as much. So that's kind of good. Like now I'm starting to get some control where, you know, everywhere I touch doesn't just wipe away the paint.
Mhm.
But what I like, again, you know, I have big fat fingers here, so I can't do any detail. Like a detail will start to almost appear like it's happening. But again, this is a pretty big panel. It's 18 inches by 24 inches. So, you know, 1.5 by 2 feet. It's pretty good size. So whatever detail, you know, if you're watching on your iPhone, it'll look like, man, Mike's getting detailed. But the truth is there's no detail yet.
Could you use your paper towel that has a little paint on it to kind of scruff up where you made it too light, if you think it's too light?
100,000%. Yeah. I will actually, yeah, as I get my, I want to make sure probably there's no paint thinner on that area. So let's just go to a dry part of it. And I'll try removing without paint thinner, just into a drier part of it where, you know, I know it's a little bit lighter. And now the towel's starting to pick up some of that paint.
Mhm.
It's twofold, Linda. Good question. At least I think that was Linda. Is I'm, you know, not picking up as much as I did here.
Right.
But then the good
And
thing
you're
is
blending.
making a nice dirty paper
Mhm.
towel. So let's pretend I want to get like a dark line of the water's ripples here.
Perfect.
Yeah, so I can start to hint at that. Yeah, good question.
You can soften edges.
Yes, exactly right. Yeah, I always say in my teaching that I want to not have secrets. But sometimes I feel like, man, you should keep this a secret. This is so fun. And it's, you know, can make some interesting, beautiful images sometimes. So I guess it'll just be our secret. Don't tell anybody.
Okay.
Now, hypothetical, if this was a rapid stream with, you know, a million rocks in it, would you do the wipe away or would you draw it?
Right now, my tendency might be to do the acrylic underpainting or something like that, or at least.
Okay.
But yeah, I have done that. In fact, I'll see if I can remember to share one that I did very much a lot of detail on the rocks. So let's just pretend there's some rocks right here, right? It's pretty easy to just you know, maybe some rocks would be nice over there, actually. Look at that.
Great idea.
Another interest. That's pretty. It's beautiful.
Some could be underwater.
Some could be underwater. Yeah, I could just hint at some underwater here that are just picking up on the tops of the rocks. Can bring the shadows in. Man, look at us. It literally takes a village to make a painting.
Wow.
Right? And if I used Q-tips, then I can make them much more rock-like, right? Having a hard edge. Look at that. Gail, good idea.
Wow, I love it.
We've got rocks.
That rocks.
Gail's like, dang it, I was gonna do that.
No, I painted mine in because I wasn't sure I could do a wipe away. That's part of why I asked, because to me, the rocks are more detail.
Generally just harder edges. They don't need to be more detailed, they just need to be harder edged.
Okay.
No,
But
I
then
mean,
later
look at
on,
the
you'll-
paint. Look at the paintings that Meg shared of Brett Cotton. Those rocks are very not detailed. They're just a little harder edge come, you know.
But then
Yeah.
you'll come in later and paint over this in theory, unless you like the result after all the wipe away.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You would glaze over them a little bit or put some kind of watermark or water movement mark over it to say that it's underwater?
Oh, if these are underwater, I was thinking some of these are above and some of these below, like I can just,
Yeah, there you go. That's it.
The one at the lower right looks like it's partway out and then part of it's under. Right there, it looks under.
yeah, so if I want them to be under, right, I would just probably make them softer edged, a little more diffused. They're also, the darks aren't gonna be as dark. And the lights probably aren't gonna be as light.
Yeah, that actually adds a lot of interest to the painting.
Yeah, and we can very quickly, you know, we're jumping way ahead, but right, I could definitely add some grasses or, you know, messing it up a little bit to add some
Mhm.
other textures. I don't know, can you see that? I can't see.
Yeah.
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 All right, we'll come back to that. But okay, so let's take these rocks and let's push them underwater.
Wow.
Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and again get a new paper towel.
That
And I'm gonna
actually,
go ahead and do one more coat of light, like wiping away, just to kind of really preserve that lightness or get the lightness back that I want before it really stains. So I'm gonna say my sun is basically behind in here. So my lightest lights are probably kind of in this area. So I can just give a little bit of paint thinner, a little bit of a scrub. It's dark, so now I would take a dry towel. Bring that across. I'm going to go back to the paint thinner and move that line. So I'm starting to think of like, how's that light hitting these clouds? The clouds in my photo reference line up perfectly with this tree. So I'm just going to scoot the light over a little bit. So I get a little more sense of movement and motion, I hope.
So
Again,
you do have a little bit of paint thinner on that towel.
that towel did there. Now it doesn't. Now I've gone back to the dry, but there's paint thinner on the panel.
Okay.
So yeah, I will use the paint thinner. So now I'm going to go back to the paint thinner again and just kind of pick up the bottoms. Now I'm going to go back to the dry paper towel again. Well, no, grab a new paper towel. Because what happens is I've left some paint thinner, so it's sitting on there for just a second. It doesn't take long. And now I can
Pick up the paint and soften edges and
exactly. Yeah, can you explain that to the group, Gail? What I'm doing there?
what he's doing is taking his lightest lights and what paint is on there and smoothing them together in a controlled way to soften the edges.
So I get my brights, but I don't want, so here's what would happen if I just did paint thinner.
It'd be hard edges and you don't
Yeah,
want
I'd get
hard
this
edges.
weird line.
Yeah,
So now I'm gonna remove that where I just put the paint thinner. See how hard that line is? That looks ridiculous and not cloud-like. Maybe that would work. Like maybe I could do that with a rock. I'll just dip a Q-tip and do a little bit of paint thinner. And I can lighten the edge that's facing the sun. the setting or rising sun or whatever it is. I know it's rising because it's my view that I took from the cabin. So I can bring that out. So, but with the paper towel, it's big, huge marks.
Mhm.
Go ahead, Gail. Sorry, I cut you off
Yep,
again.
yep. And with when he picks up the paint, he's gonna soften those edges. And I'm
I'm
gonna
gonna
guess he's gonna
change
do
my-
the same,
Yeah,
same with the trees on the left. It's a lighter tone, but it's a harder edge. And those trees are backlit, so he's gonna soften those edges as well. I'm gonna guess.
yep.
You can see the difference between the trees on the left and the trees on the right, how they have soft edges going, where the light would be hitting them and diffusing those branches and those leaves.
Correct. And then you can still see, like, I have a hard line here where I just put the paint thinner. So I'm just gonna take and remove that because I want that light. Because again, my sun is here, it's kind of shooting across. But then I don't want it a hard, stupid line. Sorry, you're not a stupid line. You're a nice line. We love you. But I still don't want it that strong.
The other thing that's neat about what he's doing is he can change the values in that sky ever so slightly. So, and I know we've talked about that before, where in the sky, there may be 3 values, but they're all between one value and 2 values and all the little bitty gradations in between. So if you just look at the values in the sky, there's probably only two strong values, a 1 and a 2, or maybe a 1 and a 3, but he's blended them all together with his paper towel and a little bit of thinner.
So now I want this to kind of fall back with fog and haze. So I'm just gonna go ahead and lighten that, just like Gail was saying. So I'm just gonna take this whole area very lightly. I'm pushing no paint thinner. I'm just picking up. Now watch how that just falls back value-wise.
And that's
Right.
toned.
Now I want a layer of fog to kind of come through here and through here. So like a low-lying cloud. Because I want this to be darker than this because I want it to come forward compared to this. So barely, I've got a dirty towel, but I can still pick up a little bit of the paint. I'm not sure if that's showing up on the monitor. And sorry, Gail, I keep cutting you off. Keep going.
Nope. To me, this is very much a tonalist approach to a painting because there's a lot of soft edges and a lot of very subtle differences between values.
Absolutely. I don't know if very many, I guess, what's his name kind of starts his painting somewhat like this, but his are so much messier. Dennis
about
Sheik.
Dennis Sheehan. Yeah, and he does a lot of his paintings from memory. He doesn't use a lot of reference photos. So if you look at his paintings, a lot of them look very, very much alike because they're from memory.
And I wonder what the memories are of. Like if they're actually locations or if they're just elements of locations.
My guess would be elements of location. And John McDonald, on the other hand, does very deliberate tonal underpaintings.
Yeah, so that's what I like is that I still think of this as let's hope it works, but if it doesn't, guess what? It's an underpainting. Yay, I can't lose.
Yeah, it was intentional.
Yeah, I mean, I want it to be as good as possible. Not always. A lot of times I would have stopped a long time ago and just said, okay, I got my big shapes. It's, I've got enough information to, if I know I'm going to paint over it, but if I'm thinking, man, it might make a nice, illuminated tones painting, maybe, I don't need to get a lot of detail because if I do get a lot of detail and it's beautiful, I will find that I try to protect the detail.
Yeah.
So I got to be careful to, you know, stop or just realize that all of this is sacrificial when I'm moving forward with the painting. All right, so now I can go into Q-tips. So now we're taking it again a little further than I might normally. But just to show you guys again, I can really start to. I mean, this is kind of like stupid magic. There's the word again. So I guess maybe I did write those handouts. The magic of it though, where things just start to kind of really reveal themselves. Because sometimes, especially if this is kind of my focal area and here where the light's really coming through, you know, having a little bit of detail over here might be a lot of fun.
And the unicorn just ran through.
There you go. And the rainbow's coming out in a bit as soon as these clouds.
The angel is chasing them all across the sky.
Yeah.
Woohoo!
You guys get it. Yep. Yeah, that's what I mean. People ask me, like, why do your paintings look a little bit, you know, magical or whatever? And I literally say, because nature is magical to me. Like, I mean, I seriously just remember laying in the forest floor, just like looking at, you know, mushrooms up close. And, you know, I loved that stuff. Spent so much time out there. And one of my biggest hopes, you know, besides, you know, selling and making a living doing this, is just to remind people that it is magical if we can take the time to observe and appreciate.
I used to lay on the forest floor and just look up through the treetops at the sunlight and how
Yeah,
leaves.
we have a beautiful birch tree in our backyard that we do that with. So that's not a bad start. I don't think. I'm kind of looking to see if things are lining up. Again, I want to make sure my shadows or reflections are kind of working, that my singular light source is kind of radiating across, that I have a sense of atmosphere. I want the top of a mountain to kind of be poking back up above the fog. I'm not sure that's reading really clearly yet. I also want to make sure that the clouds, you know, have a logic to them, kind of a hierarchy, the bigger clouds up top, the smaller clouds down below. I could figure out if I, you know, want to give my trees a little more of a, man, there's a lot of paint thinner on that. That's what gets dangerous, is when you accidentally pick up a paper towel that has a bunch of paint thinner on it. So just want to make sure I dab that paint thinner off, because it can cause a lot of havoc if it goes where it's not intended. And again, if you put too much paint thinner on your towel or on your brush, and you start getting these streaks, that can be really rough to wrestle against. So just be aware, don't add too much paint thinner, and add just a couple kind of highlight ripples almost. And these are, you know, even though there's a little more detail to these, they're still kind of like just letting me know where things exist in space.
Michael, the base of the very far back trees, it's kind of lost to me. Yeah. Where they meet the river.
So let's put in that little house just to see how it works. Those are actually Christmas lights, I think, on that. So I don't know if I want that, but I make a nice Christmas painting. I could just all of a sudden add snow to everything.
Snow, it's spring.
Did that help Michelle at all to kind of give it a
A
place?
little, but to me, it looks like it's on a hill.
Yeah, it does. It does. It doesn't read that that's lake back there.
Or
Needs-
the ripples look like they're going up the hill.
Mm-hmm.
Needs a little more shoreline, maybe.
I
It's-
agree. I feel like that building needs to be lower.
Yeah, maybe.
Or there needs to be a harder line of where the stream meets the land or the trees back.
But I think
Yes.
you're right. I bet you I just put it too high. Because normally I would stand in front of the panel. Normally I would be right here. When I'm painting, so it's always awkward painting off to my right. And so it's a little bit harder to judge where things are in space. So good notice. Thank you.
It also doesn't help that you're painting in the dark.
Yeah, that didn't help, but it's fun. We are having fun. So I'm just gonna bring that line down a little lower. Let's see, so if the bottom of these trees is here, I probably did put it up too high. It's probably only just like a finger's width higher. Does that
Yeah.
feel better?
Yeah.
Not weird. Just
That
a
was your
little-
fat fingers.
My big fat fingers. Yeah, no, good catch, you guys. Thank you. And that's the kind of stuff where it's important that I would step back or bring in somebody, or you know what I mean? It's so important that I get this information in this stage as correct as possible.
Totally fixed it.
Oh, good. Got a little house back there, having a party.
You and your lake house.
Yeah, this lake house has been a really good investment as far as the amount of paintings I've done from this. Could even, could almost even, let's see if we can give it a little smoke. I don't know, this might be getting a little cheesy and silly here, but
That works.
Love it.
bring some. Phew! Yeah, so what I would do if I was to keep working probably is just, slowly carve out some more of these trees, make sure I got the shapes right, that they're not leaning again, because I'm standing way off to the right, reaching into it, like feels like maybe this tree needs to come in this way a little bit so it's not leaning. I could bring in detail over there, but I don't want it to be probably as much as over here. Yeah, any questions, observations on this at all? Because I'm pretty happy with this as an underpainting, or maybe after class I'll keep working on it.
How much time do you really have to sculpt this honestly, with your paints drying?
About 15 to 20 good minutes, and then it starts to get tackier and a little more difficult.
So your time is really up now.
Roughly, but I can always bring in a little more paint thinner or add a little more paint. And then
Okay.
also realize I don't want these rocks, glowing in the dark.
Really lovely.
Mhm.
If you do make changes later, adding stuff, I'm really interested in seeing how you do that.
Yeah, I'll probably leave it to get back to in another class, but yeah, we'll see. Maybe tomorrow. I don't know. Yeah,
And that
then,
was,
like the bottom of this water, that was a marker for me. And as I step back, I'm like, oh yeah, the ripples here would not be as bright as the ripples here because the light's behind this tree. So those ripples, I know where the bottom of my ground is. Now I'm just going to darken those so that they're not even, because I want to keep the viewer over here. So I'm just trying to pick up some paint.
Plus, wouldn't there be a little bit of land there?
Yeah, I mean, I could hint at very lightly, because again, these are all in shadow. So if I wanted to bring in some, like, you know, smaller trees that are maybe along the base here, maybe some bushes over here, like just to rough it up, make it implied detail, right?
That's lovely.
I think it is magical how you can actually create your bushes and foreground, whatever's in your foreground in this method. It's pretty magical.
Yeah, and again, it's you creating it as the viewer. I'm just giving you lights, darks, and some shapes.
Mhm.
Cool. Everybody good-ish?
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, that'll give us time to look at our work. Not happy with whatever explosion I did here. So that may be a point where I would come back in with a smaller brush. And I could actually. There we go. Just give it a little bit of a refined shape. I hope.
What is that, about a 10 flat?
Yep, exactly right. 10 flat. Gold star for you.
Well, I love brushes. However, they don't love me yet. Yet.
Yeah. You gotta be brutal to them like I am, and then just tell them to go tell their friends. If they don't behave, this is what happens.
Michael, would you add more color to this when it's a little dry?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, no, I intended to do it as kind of the underpainting, getting my design and my shapes. So again, if I think of drawing and then blocking in, what I've done is I've kind of drawn and blocked in at the same time with this technique. So again, that's why I like it. In theory, I think it saves time. I don't know if it does, because sometimes I fall in love with it and try to preserve it. But yeah, there we go.
Could you finish it next week or do more on it next week? Glazing, you mentioned?
Yeah, sure. Let's do it. All right, let's take a 5-minute break, come back and take a look at all your guys' fantastic work. But that was a ton of fun. I always enjoy doing the wiping away, as you guys know. And yeah, interesting effects that it does. I can't wait to turn on the lights, or maybe I'm terrified to turn on the lights and actually see what I did. But see you guys in 5.